You're tuned to WPFW 89.3 in Washington. I'm Rusty Hassan with Thursday Late Night Jazz. We just heard Surge in Splendor from Andy Milne and DAP Theory, The Seasons of Being. And we have Andy Milne on the line right now. Andy, welcome to WPFW.
Thank you.
So tell us about DAP Theory and Surge in Splendor.
Well, that's the first cut on a record that I just won a Juno Award for, which was kind of several years in the making, and that piece sort of sets the tone for the overall, I guess, vision and direction of that particular iteration of DAP Theory, which was sort of the core group plus 5 guests, and I was working with a homeopath to develop a model for understanding people's emotional background for writing for them in the short term of it.
Interesting. LaTanya Hall was a vocalist on that?
Yeah, that's my wife, actually.
Oh, okay. So definitely really a wonderful project, and I've really been enjoying that. Very, very fascinating, interesting cover also with all the various canines.
Yeah.
So, folks, I don't make assumptions about my listening audience because you always have somebody new to the music tuning in. So, tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got into to playing the piano and what got you started with this improvisational music.
Well, I mean, I started playing piano when I was pretty young. I was about 7 years old, and I was taking classical lessons when I was growing up, and I got turned on to jazz at a pretty young age, and it sort of took a little time to, I guess, to kind of find, get some keystrokes to kind of get inside and find teachers that could help provide me some sort of context for what I was drawn to.
Where were you growing up? Where was it?
I grew up in Canada.
Okay. Whereabouts?
Outside of Toronto.
Okay.
Yeah. So when I was young, I mean, I didn't have a lot of sort of, I guess, my access was kind of limited to based upon like my brother-in-law kind of giving me some recordings that I got turned on to, and then I started listening to a lot of jazz on the radio. But I mean, it wasn't until I was sort of in my teenage that I started kind of getting into trying to understand things a little more seriously.
Mm-hmm.
And then fast forwarding, I went to York University in Toronto and studied with Oscar Peterson, and
okay, wow.
That was the sort of first point of entry. I mean, he was one of my teachers. I mean, I had some other teachers there, David Mott and John Gittins, two fabulous, musicians,
mm-hmm.
theorists, and composers in the Toronto area that exposed me to a lot of, I guess, fundamentals, but also kind of started prying open the box that sort of, I guess, is where your creative licenses
sure.
live.
Mm-hmm.
And as a young
mm-hmm.
person, you're going to school, you don't necessarily know if that's, copacetic until you realize, oh, it is. In fact, when you get certain people that can support that, you're kind of off and running, and then it's a matter of, I guess, reconciling your sort of who the musician you think you want to be, and sort of learning about yourself as you go along.
So you, what was studying with Oscar Peterson like? I mean, here's this icon of the music that you encountered because of where you were growing up.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's exactly that. I mean, he was an icon, and just kind of his presence in the room just sort of, demanded a certain kind of seriousness. But
mm-hmm.
I mean, the lessons I got from him were pretty profound, but they were quite simple.
Mm-hmm.
But they sort of, given the source, you kind of take them very seriously, and you try to sort of interpret and process. And so that a lot of the work is done on your own after that, 15 minutes of interaction, and you're kind of going, well, this must be deep.
Uh-huh. Yes, okay. Absolutely. So you work with such folks as Steve Coleman and Ravi Coltrane and Cassandra Wilson. How were those hookups made? How did you work that out?
Well, so when I left off here, I was just studying with Oscar, and then when I finished university, I went to the Banff Center, which is out in Western Canada, and at the time that I was there studying that summer, Steve Coleman was the artistic director of that program. And so I met him actually when I was auditioning to get into the program, and then didn't really actually know that much about his music. I was going there because a lot of my friends had gone there, and everybody had this positive experience. And so I kind of went, and then I really got turned on to his concepts, and spent a lot of time with him that summer.
Mm-hmm.
And guess he was keeping an eye on me because he saw somebody who had potential to process and interpret his music. So about a year after that, I decided to move to New York, and he was very supportive in bringing me into his projects and eventually joining his band. So it was sort of as a mentor that led into a professional collaborative relationship, and then it's through him that I met Cassandra Wilson and worked with her for a little while when I first moved to the United States.
Was that still when M-Bass was still working the more cutting edge type music that Cassandra was a part of?
Yeah, well, when I worked with Cassandra, she was doing more of her music was, I guess you could say, associated with that at the time when Greg and Osby and Cassandra Wilson and Steve Coleman were all kind of working at Robin Eubanks and under the sort of umbrella of the M-Bass Collective.
Yeah.
So I kind of came in to New York at the tail end of when they were working collectively, but I still worked with them individually.
Okay, yeah. She had a fascinating career. It's really been marvelous to watch what she's done with her music.
Oh, man,
it really has.
Yeah.
So what did you do afterwards then? In terms of, I see you've done film music and as well as getting into the academics. What were some of the film projects you worked on?
We're doing a quick survey here. Yeah, I started scoring some films for William Shatner about 8 years ago, I guess. So I had the opportunity to work with him pretty closely on 7 different films that were all kind of around the similar theme, but they were all sort of profiling the actors that followed him, succeeded him in the Star Trek franchise in terms of captains that came after him. So it was a film called The Captains that was the first film I scored for him, and then that led to me scoring 6 more films for him that were related to that. One of them, they were all sort of profiling different actors, and each one had sort of had their own theme in their own sort of half hour. So it was, musically they had each kind of had their own kind of character for each film, to sort of represent each actor. So that was just a great experience working with him because I was a Star Trek fan, but it also it was fun having the opportunity to work on music for those films.
It must have been. It must have been. You got this concert coming up Monday, solo piano, and at the Arts Club. So let's do this. We'll talk more about it, but you can hold. Could you hold on as we play the Metamorph, and then we'll come back and play something else? Tell us about your approach in this composition, and then we'll talk about the album after we hear it.
Well, this tune actually is funny. We were just talking about Shatner because when I wrote this piece, I wrote it as a kind of exploration of a concept that was presented in one of the Star Trek Next Generation episodes. There's this character who was a metamorph, who sort of was a woman that sort of changed her form to, I guess, her whole beingness, I guess, in a way to accommodate the man that she was with, which was, in this day and age, it probably seems incredibly sexist, but it was, that's sort of what Star Trek was great at doing, was applying sort of this lens of the quote-unquote future to look at the present, but the idea behind the piece is just that the form was very malleable that way, that it could morph based upon my whim.
Well, let's hear it, and then we'll talk about the concert coming up on Monday.
Sure.
You tuned to Thursday Late Night Jazz on WPFW. I'm Rusty Hassan, and we just heard Metamorph. Andy Milne, our guest tonight, from his Dreams and False Alarms, and really fascinating improvisation on your composition on an album that features a lot of popular music, compositions by Sting and Bob Marley and Joni Mitchell. What was your approach in putting this album together?
Well, I was thinking about just new. I've always liked folk music, and I was thinking of that as just sort of applying the sort of standards model to that repertoire and that lineage. And, because a lot of that music is usually, the construction of it is maybe simpler than what people typically, associate with jazz standards. And at the same time, it's sort of more visual, and the message is kind of identifies pretty strong with the lyrics and the pieces. So I kind of wanted to just open my sort of sights to that repertoire, even though I'd sort of been thinking about doing record that was standards based, but I opted to go that route where I was thinking about music that was kind of how people might interpret folk music, or the range in which people might consider music folk like, and there's the challenge of keeping it simple in its sort of personality, but there's sort of the advanced language that kind of allows you to still, I guess, think of the different kind of ways you can make a piece of music slightly more complex, but still retaining its character, and sort of like that. That's an interesting challenge for me, because I have to sort of spend a lot of time with it to get to really make it my own.
Mm-hmm. And what about DAP Theory? How often do you work as an ensemble with them?
Well, less now. I mean, I had put a lot of my energy in that group for quite a long time. Just got a DC connection with the group too, because the two former drummers, were both DC natives, Sean Rickman, and for him, Mark Prince, and the spoken word artists in the group, both from who. Sort of everybody who's been a spoken word artist in the group has actually been DC as well. John Moon, before him, Kokai. So there's been this DC connection, but the band is sort of. I kind of took some time off after making that recording, The Seasons of Being. I took some time off. I went through some health issues. I had prostate cancer, and I was kind of slowing down and having to recalibrate, and so it was kind of ironic that record would then end up winning a Juno Award, because I was really, realigning my sort of artistic focus, because I started the trio.
Sure, okay.
And playing originals and standards in this trio, and so that was I was focusing on that. But then this album got recognized, so it sort of had me thinking, okay, well, there's maybe some more momentum I still want to put into DAP Theory. But we haven't actually played since December, so I just got off the road with my trio.
Who's on your trio?
Clarence Penn on drums.
Oh, okay.
And John Hebert on the bass.
Wow, sure, okay, fantastic ensemble.
So yeah, we just went in the studio right after the tour, made our first recording that I'll put out later this year.
Looking forward to that. We'll definitely include that here at WPFW. Absolutely.
Great.
So
yeah.
So this concert at the Arts Club of Washington. Monday nights, part of a series that Burnett Thompson has done for the last couple of years. Guys, it must be close to 5 years. It's been just remarkable, the artist that you're following in the company of.
I know, he's pulled a lot of people through.
Yeah,
I met Burnett a few years ago, and he asked me to do this. It's been over a year since he asked me to do it, but looking forward to it.
Well, the Arts Club of Washington is located at 2017 I Street Northwest. And for ticket info, you can contact Burnett at burnett@pianojazz.com. And I think at the website pianojazz.com you can find links to buying tickets for the concert. Again, 2017 I Street Northwest, Monday at 7 p.m. So you just came off the road on a tour. You also are working at the University of Michigan and doing other teaching. How's that balance working out for you?
Oh, it's interesting. Yeah, I mean, I haven't quite fully completed my sort of migration to living in Michigan, but
okay.
I really like teaching out there, and it's a great school, and it's been a challenging year because I've been going back and forth between New York and Michigan, but I'm working toward actually spending a lot more, most of my time in Michigan.
Where will you call home as a?
That's the funny thing. Yeah, my wife is still in New York, so it's like it's hard to call. I mean, I don't actually have a place to live in Michigan right now, so it's technically not. I'm not really home there just yet. But I mean, it's where I'm headed as far as settling in terms of it's a position there at the university that I can actually really sink my teeth into and have a role that I've been looking for a long time. So it's quite full
time with tenure track and all of that academic
all
stuff.
That's good stuff.
All that good stuff, rather than making the life as an adjunct. I've been teaching jazz history as an adjunct for about 35 years now. But
that's the deal.
I know, but I can afford to be exploited because I did have another career as a union representative.
Oh,
that fortunately now has me getting a pension. So I'm really loving it, teaching at the University of the District of Columbia.
Right.
Where we've got a great program with Alan Johnson directing the jazz program there. So
great.
Absolutely. So it's wonderful. We have this Felix Grant Jazz Archive. Felix Grant being this jazz radio personality of the 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s. And he donated all his interviews with all people like Oscar Peterson, to the university. And so we have a wonderful archive there with Reuben Jackson.
Wow.
Reuben Jackson's our archivist, so it's really a great work environment for the music, and I'm really thrilled. Even though I have a bag full of final exams to get through in the next couple of days.
Yeah, sure.
But it's good that you got a good solid position that is so important these days.
I mean, I know a lot of my colleagues, musicians, who are sort of looking for that to add to their life and their work and how they can sort of pivot around the flexibility, but also the stability at the same time. So I'm fortunate that they came my way because it kind of came at a tricky time in my life, but it was worth sort of.
Absolutely, and having dealt with a health issue, the health insurance that comes along with positions really is important for musicians. So So again, what kind of will we be mixing in some of these standards along with your originals on Monday?
Yeah, probably a lot of these. What's interesting is now that I'm doing this trio, it took me a second to sort of recalibrate how I was composing because. A lot of the times when I was writing for Dap Theory and other types of ensembles, there's a lot of voices in the mix, and so some of that music didn't necessarily translate so easily for solo piano. And so the newer material, it's kind of interesting because I've kind of found that sweet spot where it kind of can live in a trio, but it can also live in a solo. So I'll probably play a little mixture of some of the new music that I just recorded for the trio, as well as some of the standards or jazz originals that we've been reconstructing. And I don't know, I haven't decided exactly what, but it's given me a range of possibilities. I might play something from the new Dap Theory record as well too.
Awesome. Well, I'm looking forward to seeing you on Monday, Andy. It's again the Arts Club of Washington, 2017 I Street Northwest. The performance begins at 7 p.m. and there'll be a reception to follow, and folks will be able to talk to you. And you should bring some CDs along with you and sell them to the folks who are there.
I intend to. Yeah.
So that always works out very well. And we're going to let the folks hear how you interpret Joni Mitchell. We have Amelia queued up. So, Andy, we see you Monday. Thanks for calling in. We really are looking forward to it.
My pleasure, Rusty. Thank you.